Okay, so first, what I wanted to say that we are very happy to have a second part today and to meet with you, Ayellet, second time, and that you had a time and a willingness to talk with us and to share your knowledge. And you have a lot of knowledge in our topic, in topic of war, in topic of crisis. And I will repeat just a few things for the people who haven't been last time with us, that Ayellet is a beautiful psychologist, I would say, amazing, and a social worker, and works with crisis topic. And also she's a mom. And do I understand it well that you live in Ashkelon?
Yep.
So you experience a lot of challenging situation in your life. And being a psychotherapist is also challenging to deal with people who's experienced the same with you. So it's a big pleasure for us. And we will get back to you just in a minute, if you don't mind, because we have the video from Avi, who was very helpful in organizing all of these events. And he wanted to share with you a few words because he's not here today and he wanted to be, and his thoughts are with us. He's just flying, so I will share the video.
Hey everybody, it's Avi Tenenbaum. I wanted to welcome everybody to part 2 of this training. If you are new here, then welcome. If you are returning from part 1, then we're glad to see that you're safe and well. Very excited to hear about it. I'm actually going to be flying exactly at the time of the training, but I'm looking forward to hearing about how it goes. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. I want to give a big thank you to Ayellet, who's such a big expert, and she's giving her time for free, and she's going to be giving further tools for managing difficult times of crisis and war. So we're looking forward to hearing about how that goes. And a big thank you to Dr. Aliona Plotnikova, who both her and Ayellet have put in so much time, resources, effort, money, and just devoted themselves to allowing this training to occur. And Dr. Aliona, you are a real superhero. You inspire us, and all of your people, the Ukrainian people, really inspire us. You're incredible. You're just amazing. And we hope that these difficult times settle and that we get to meet one another in peaceful times. But until then, I hope this training is very helpful and successful. I'm looking very forward to hearing about it. And just thank you again for coming. Big thank you to Ayellet. Ayellet, we're gonna do your magic today, and it's gonna be so helpful. And a big thank you to everybody involved. Have a good day.
Actually, I saw it the first time myself as well. I saw only for 15 seconds. So let's wave hands for Avi. Yeah, and I'll ask you to start if you can.
I can start? All right, awesome. So welcome. Glad to see you guys back. So what we're gonna do today, this is part 2, but we're gonna reinforce really part 1. We're gonna go into a little bit more depth and details. A few things that I wanna explain. One is that I will be in Bulgaria. I'm flying to the area on Sunday as part of the Israeli Trauma Coalition to help out, to see if we can be helpful to the teams there, and to some direct contact with refugees, and some of it would be with people, with mental health supporters, with teachers, anyone that can, that really is doing the work on the ground. I'm coming with 2 other therapists. Both of them are speaking Ukrainian and Russian, and myself, I'm going to conduct my stuff in English. So Aliona and I are trying to see if we can get some Zoom sessions together to see if you guys can join us when we're there, if you want to. So that's one. So I'll be very happy to see that, to have contact, and I believe that I will have more of an insight to what's going on for you guys and what you're dealing with. So that's one. The second thing is, my understanding is that every time we learn something, the second time we hear the materials, we hear something else, okay? So usually the first time is a little overwhelming and we're like, okay, exactly what does she want? Then we go home or we go to the field and we try it. Then we come back and we have different questions, right? The questions that we had in the first time, probably not gonna be the same questions that we have today. So the way I wanna start it, I wanna conduct this as a conversation. It means you guys can stop me at any time or write something in the chat so I can go back to it and really explain. I would love to have questions from you to start with, And also, if you can give me examples from things that you are experiencing. You can tell me, hey, last time you talked about this, it didn't really work. I tried your practical tool. It didn't work for me. So can you please give me another angle for it? I can tell you one thing. There is no such thing as one size fits all, which means you're going to try something practical that we're going to give you today. If it doesn't work, you don't give up. You go in a different angle. Okay? You make sure that the person is regulated, and then you try again. Okay, so don't give up if you're trying something and you're saying, well, it's not working. I don't know what this lady wants. It's okay if it doesn't work. You try one more and a different one and a different angle and see if that works for you. Because usually something happens. And when you succeed one time, the magic begins. Okay, so having said that, if you have any questions, specific questions that you want to ask, this is a great time to do it. And I'll give it a second so you guys can ask it and maybe I'll get it translated, right, Aliona? Or if you can write it in the chat box, something that you've tried this week, or a situation that you were in, or a conversation that you had over the phone with someone, and you said, okay, I do not know what to say to that person. How do I even start? Because what we're dealing with is an intervention. This is not psychotherapy. This is not yet trauma-based therapy, which we do here in Israel. We have a lot of training that has to do with trauma-focused therapy. We have like 12 to 15 sessions with people, but that happens after the fact, when the situation calms down, right? So what we're doing here is psychological first aid, kind of like how when you put a tourniquet on someone so he doesn't bleed, we're giving them emotional support and mental support in order for them to be able to continue and function until the crisis shifts. Then we start treatment. Okay, so that's the timeline that we're dealing with. Super important to know what our reference point is from a timeline perspective. All right, so if you have questions, I would love to hear it, or examples from the field. That would be great. Last time we also talked a little bit about the differences between having a phone intervention and a face-to-face intervention. Super important that we talk about it today as well. Okay, so I am waiting. I'm giving it a minute to see if anybody is coming up with an example.
Я маю запитання.
I have a question, if I may.
У нас я декілька разів у Львові. Я сама зі Львова.
I'm from Lviv,
Декілька разів ми з колегами чергували
and
на залізнодорожній
my colleagues and I
Там було багато людей, які
did some shifts at the railway station, and there were many refugees there waiting for their train to proceed to other countries. And when they heard any sounds, that was not a siren, just any sounds, and they were looking for a volunteer, and they asked, what is it? Is it an air raid alert? There were many people of this kind. And as soon as the sirens started sounding, a lot of these people would seek shelter. There were a lot of anxious people that would approach volunteers, and they would double ask, is it really a bomb shelter, or maybe it's just an underground passage? So to the best of my understanding, you need to tell such people that everything is fine. You are in a safe place, in the safest place possible. We are here together. It's something temporary. Or maybe there's something else that we can tell them to calm them down and help them mitigate their anxiety.
Awesome question. I love it. Thank you so much. So here's what you do, because we have that all the time with sirens here. And what you are telling me, really, what you're describing is a situation where people are hyper vigilant, and they have a response, an immediate response, right? To some people are asking what the question is in English. I guess I was the only one that got the question in English, Aliona, because they just asked it on the chat.
Just a second.
Okay.
No, just
all right. So you
please
need to
go
switch
to the English
channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. So what you're saying really is that they're having a startle response, and they're having this acute stress reaction to when they're hearing the sirens. Well, think about it this way. We have it all the time here, so this is an easy one. Usually, when people are going and having that kind of a reaction. They can be, their heart is pounding and they're looking for shelter, and some of them are shaking, and you can see the anxiousness, right, rising up. You're looking at a physiological reaction. It's an immediate physiological reaction. We talked about it last time, that the entry to that mode is from a physiological aspect, right? So our brain goes into the survival mode, and when that happens, because I'm thinking I have to run for my life, okay? So adrenaline is going into the body. Cortisol is going into the body. Those are stress hormones, and my heart is pounding, and I'm a little shaky, and I think I'm under attack. All right. Now we can tell them, hey, it's safe. It's not going to do much because they're already in that state. In order to get them out of that state, it's not automated. It's not automatic response to get out of that state. So in order to come out of it, we do a few things. One, we look at them and we say, we're with you. We're not leaving you. I am right here with you. You're not alone. Okay. We have realized through research that when someone understands that he's not going through something alone, his stress goes down immediately. Okay. Feeling alone is one of the causes of this for the stress to go up. So one, I'm here, I'm with you, we're not leaving you. Two, what you're experiencing right now, that is your body's reaction to thinking that this is a real thing. Thank God that's the case. That's what I tell kids here. I tell them, good for you that that's your reaction, because your body's smart and you're smart. You just came from a war zone. Are you supposed to be aloof? Are you supposed to be like, oh, everything is okay? No. If you were like that, I would be worried. Okay. So your reaction, super normal to what you just experienced. It's super normal. But in order for this to stop, because the heart is pounding because your adrenaline kicked in, let's do something about it. We have to shake our body, shake our hands, especially with kids. Now, if you have parents, I'm assuming moms with kids, right? Definitely want to get those moms to do something with their children, right? So you tell them, you give them a job, and the minute they have a job, they already feel competent. They already feel like they can do this, they can handle this. So, my body thought it was a real thing. It's not a real thing. Thank God it's not a real thing, and thank God I'm prepared. All right, so I'm gonna shake my hands, and I'm gonna take a few deep breaths. We talked about the breaths, I think, last time, but we're gonna do it this time too. We're gonna do the 5-2-5, and then we're gonna calm it down. But think about what we just did. You normalized it for them. They realized that being hypervigilant is okay under circumstances of war. You also can tell them, hey, psychoeducation, like we talked last time, you need to understand that every time you think that you're not safe, your heart's gonna pound and your body's gonna go into a mode, because that's what your body's supposed to do. You're supposed to go into a survival mode. It's okay. You just came from a war. Now, there's a natural healing. You'll see that when you get to a safe place, after a week or two, your body will calm down. There will be a natural healing to it. Okay? So you're giving them hope. You're telling them they're not alone. You're helping them do something with their body. You're giving them psychoeducation, and you're normalizing it. Yeah? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. And it's all like in one sentence. Now, you can tell someone it's safe, but his body is telling him something different. The body just told me it's not safe. You're telling me it's safe. Lady, we're on the border. Really? Are we really safe? Right? That's why it's not working half of the time, because I can tell you it's happening for us here when rockets are hitting. So we have sirens and the kids are scared. And some of the parents look at them and say, don't worry about it. We're good. We're fine. You're safe. You're in a bomb shelter. It doesn't help the kids. What needs to be done is to say your body is having a reaction right now. It's a normal reaction because somebody's firing rockets at you. Okay. Now let's get it out. Let's take control over our body. Take control over your body and let's shake it off. Once you offer them control, you are offering them life. You offer it though. You tell them, you're not telling them that I'm in control. I'm telling you it's safe. The language has to shift. I'm telling you, you're in control. How about if you tell your body to calm down? How about if I show you how to do it? We're going to do it together. If you normalize it, that's how they're going to start talking to each other. If you tell them, hey, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, you're safe, but then nothing more, all they're going to do is every time they're going to say, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. That's what you're hearing, I'm sure, on the border. I'm so scared. This is so scary. Where is the next bomb shelter? And you can again, normalize it to them. It is super helpful when you start talking like that, they start talking like that. And we want them to have that kind of a message to the kids. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. 5 to 5 breaths goes like this. You go in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You smell the flowers. You stop for 2. And then you take it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You burn down the candles, right? Take it out of your mouth. What it does is it activates the vagus nerve. Okay, the vagus nerve is one of the nerves that is responsible for our anxieties level, also for inflammation and other things. But it is such an important part of our body that we rarely use intentionally. Now, if you do those breathings, but you don't just do 1 or 2, you do like for a whole minute, what happens usually to people is they immediately calm down. The response immediately calms down. That nerve is responsible for all the internal organs, and the anxiety calms down the minute you do it right. So 5, 2, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through the nose, you hold for 2, then you go, you take it out. Try it at home before you give it to people. Do it in a cycle, do it for a minute, do it for 2 minutes, and you'll see that you're going to have a shift in the way that you feel. But you have to tell people, here, you have a role, you have a job, you can do this. I'm sorry, my dogs just walked in. So, all right? Okay. So, any other questions? And I hope I answered it. If I didn't, please let me know.
Так, дякую.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Perfect. Other questions, because those are great ones, because you guys are bringing stuff from the field. It's more than I can ever do. Did anybody get a phone call and didn't know what to do with it? Didn't know how to answer? Felt like he's like, okay, I don't know what to tell you. Because I know a lot of the times people will get a call and they will say, my friend just, I lost a friend. Or I don't know where my father is. I'm really, really worried. And I'm really, really scared. What do you do with that? Yes, no? Aliona, you tell me?
You actually read my
Ну,
mind.
якщо дозволите, тоді я ще одне запитання задам.
Well, then I will ask another question if I may.
Absolutely.
I had a phone call from my client whose parents is in Kharkiv. And since the outbreak of the war, he was trying really hard to talk them into leaving. But his dad said, no, we will not leave. We are in control. Everything is fine. And the guy himself was in Kyiv. And during the first several days, he was really worried. He even wanted to go there to evacuate them from Kharkiv. And so he asked me, what do I do? What do I do? How do I tell him? He was like, how do I tell my parents that they are in danger? And I was not really sure which advice to give him, but still he cannot really convince his parents to leave Kharkiv being in Kyiv himself. And it's a sort of helpless or hopeless situation because he's in Kyiv, but at the same time, he cannot really extricate his parents out of the military action area. And so he called me and he was like, what do I do? What do I do? Which words should I use to talk my parents into leaving?
That's a tough one. I don't know anybody that can talk their parents to doing anything, really, you know, in a normal situation, forget in time of war, right? But think about it this way. You can only do what you can do as a therapist. You have to understand that you're not Superwoman. We're not. And it's very limited what we can do. So I can be on the line with him. I can tell him that I'm here for him. And I can continually ask questions because he knows the answer. And you also want to listen to the subtext. His subtext is, I can't help my parents. That's his subtext, right? What he's actually saying is, I can't help them. I really want to, but I can't. That's what he needs to focus on. So if we reframe it for him, so the first thing that you do is you understand the condition, right? What's going on for him. And then you go for the subtext and you give empathy. It sounds to me like you really want to help your parents. Like, and you can't. And the fact that you can't is leaving you helpless. The fact that you can't is what's getting to him, not the fact that he wants to help his parent, right? Okay. Now, what do you want to do with that? And what can you do? We can only control the things that we do. What can you do? Can you support them by the phone? Okay. If they ask for advice, can you give it to them? Sure. Can you be with them and tell them, hey, I'm here for you. I am right here for you. And I am your line of air, right? Like your oxygen line, really. I am right here for you. What would you like to do? He is in a situation that a lot of people right now are feeling in the Ukraine where they cannot help and they feel helpless. You want to target that? Some of these kids, and he's not a kid, right? But he's someone's kid. They feel very guilty. And if something is going to happen to his parents, he's going to feel very, very guilty. Because he'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't try and I didn't do everything I could. Now, it sounds to me like the fact that he's in a safer place than they are right now.
Так, він знаходиться
Yes.
в безпечному місці.
He is.
He's in a safe place.
He's in a safe place. So one of the things that you can tell him, that the fact that you're in a safe place is probably the best thing you can do for your parents right now. One, because they don't have to worry about you. And two, you can help out if you're in a safe spot. If you were not in a safe spot, you couldn't help out. So feeling guilty over being in a safe spot is not helpful to anybody, okay? Now, if he's very worried, sit with your worry for a second. That's what I do with people. Sit with it for a second, feel it for a second. It's uncomfortable. When you worry, it's uncomfortable. Because if you shut it down for a second, the thoughts, and you just sit in it for a second, it's really uncomfortable. You can feel it in your stomach. But then tell me, what are you going to do after the worry? After you're done worrying, what do you want to do? Because there's got to be a life after worry. There's got to be a life after fear. There's got to be something. So now that you're worried, the fact that you're worried is not helpful. And it's very, very big and it's consuming you. I want you to take the worry, put it in perspective, feel it for a second. Don't run away from it. Because what he wants to do, he wants to run away to action. Because he can't take it. Now, he cannot do anything. If he could, he would. All he can do, and that's where, do you see what I'm saying? You map it. You contain the feeling, you give it a name, you let him sit with it, and then you tell him, now that we know how it feels and you're worried, what can you do with the options that are given to you? What can you do? Right? You can stay in touch. You can talk to them 3 times a day. You can see if they have any food. I don't know, send them stuff, whatever it is, depending on the war zone, I'm assuming, depending on the situation. But reframe the whole situation for him, because he sounds to me like he's like this, going crazy over worry, and he's helpless. Now, overall, and please don't take this the wrong way, men need to do. They need to do. It's very difficult for them because this is usually how they solve problems. You want milk? I'll get you milk. If you're sad about the milk, I don't know what to do. That's men usually, okay? They're very good at doing. So you want to give, when a man, when he's on the phone and he can't do, that's where he just lost his biggest strength, right? So you want to reframe that for them. You reframe it, you explain it, you make it smaller, containable, and tell them you're going to worry. This war is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You have to pace yourself. So you worried today. Okay, now what are you going to do about it? Always move it into action mode, even if the action would be just to be on the phone. You cannot give him answers to what to do with his parents, because God forbid, he takes them out of there and they come to Kiev and then they're bombed there. God forbid. Okay, you don't know what the right answer is. No one does at this point, unless you're, somebody in the government, I guess. I hope this helps. we don't have answers for everything. And I think this is the part where
Дякую.
I think that's the part as therapists that is really, really hard for us, because people are asking us for help and we don't have anything to give them. So what we want to give them is just a second to say, first for you, I don't have answers. I don't know what to tell this guy, but I can tell him that I'm right here with him, that he's feeling this and that. This is the subtext of what he's feeling. This is what he's struggling with, the fact that he has no action. What actions can he do? Really what we do in this work of intervention is we're constantly assessing and we're slicing it, right? One slice, two slices, three slices, all the time, constantly doing that, constantly assessing. This is the situation, I'm going to reframe it to you. Now what do you want to do? This is the situation, I'm going to reframe it. Now what do you want to do? All right?
А ви дозволите продовжити це питання?
May I expand it, this topic?
May what?
She wants to expand this topic.
Yes, absolutely. Ask.
Поки наша безпомічність зараз є справжньою.
Our helplessness is visceral or real right now. And at a certain point, people ask us what to do.
Те, що люди не виїхали, да, ви їх не допереконали,
And let's say
призводить
people do not leave because you were not able to convince them.
сталося щось страшне.
And then something horrendous happens.
То це не таке питання, типу, там лишатися і типу
It's not like, okay, you decide to stay there and you starve for 1 week, or you leave and then everything will be fine. So if you do not talk them into leaving, something really bad or horrendous might happen. And these things are happening in Ukraine right now. People are dying, people go missing.
я робив, але все рівно
And
приходить, я
so
робив замало.
I did something, but it was not enough. You always have this feeling that I did something, but it was not enough. And then this helplessness grows into guilt. So on the one hand, I did everything right, but it was not enough, or I didn't do, or I did too little. So when something bad happens, you will be consumed by guilt. And these are the calls, or these are the appeals that I receive from my clients right now.
This is yours or this is your client? Are you feeling helpless or are they feeling helpless?
Ну, якби, я теж, але я поки що це прийняла. В
Me
мене-
too, but I accepted it, so I'm fine with it. And fortunately, my family members are fine. So basically, I am at a different stage right now. So you cannot convince them, then you act something. But I heard it from my clients that they just accepted the fact that their parents decided to leave. They didn't really do any more persuasion, and they had to suffer some terrible consequences. So this is about my clients.
Okay. So when they say that they're feeling helpless because they're feeling guilty, right? That's what you're saying. What does guilt feel like? What does that mean that they're guilty? What does that mean?
No.
Be your client for a second.
Мгм.
We'll do a showcase for a second, okay? So you see how the conversation goes. Be your client for a second.
Окей. Мені важко зобразити клієнта.
It's difficult for me to embody a client because I'm dissociated, but I will try to do it.
Okay, hold on. What does that mean that you're dissociated? Hold the phone. That's a big word.
Ну, в тому сенсі, що я трошки емоційно відсторонююсь, бо я зараз
I try to distance myself emotionally
Okay.
because I am at a stage when my parents are in Kyiv and I accepted their decision. I'm in a safe place. My parents are in a less safe place. I accepted their decision and I'm doing what you described. So I accepted their decision and I feel less helpless and I try to act and do whatever I can.
Got it. So
Well,
I'm not
as for the consequences of this decision of theirs, this is something that I'm trying not to think about. I'm trying to be here now.
Right.
So that's why I don't really want to make any
No,
forecasts,
then
not
don't
even
go there.
forecasts, but
do not go
worries.
there. Then do not go there because that's the last thing I want to do for you. So don't go there. But let's talk a little more in general. Think about it this way. The feeling of helplessness is big. okay? And it touches everyone on every level, the therapist, the people on the streets, it doesn't matter who you are. Now, if you're gonna rephrase it and reframe it as helplessness, that's what you're gonna get, okay? So the language is crucial. It's not helpless. It's I actually, because everybody that you're talking about did something. So for example, I tried to convince my parents, I tried to talk to them, I offered them solutions, right? I even offer help. I've done all these things. These are not actions of someone that is helpless. Helpless means I didn't do anything, okay? So first we want to reframe. You have done a lot of actions and you didn't get to the result that you wanted. That's a different way of looking at it. This is not helplessness. Very, very important, okay? And so did you as a therapist, right? We talk to a lot of clients. Eventually, it's their motivation that counts. It's their shift that counts, not ours. If I'm gonna be feeling helpless every time a client is not gonna take or do the step that he needs to do, I will not be a therapist because it will burn me out in 5 minutes, okay? So in order to be in that right state of mind, we really want to be in a position where we're saying, what did you do? So when somebody says, I'm helpless, ask them. Ask them, I call it a call for action. What did you actually do? You're feeling helpless, I understand that. When somebody feels helpless, it's awful, it's consuming. So tell me, what actions did you take? Well, I talked to my parents. What else did you do? I talked to them again. Okay. Did you do something different this time? Sure, I tried again and I did it. Okay. This is where, after you ask these questions, psychoeducation kicks in. Okay. Psychoeducation is such. I'm going to just show this for a second, so I think it would help. The brain part. Everybody loves the brain part. And the reason that I'm showing that is because what I'm going to explain to the people that I'm talking to is when people are under so much stress and your parents are under so much stress, they are not able to process the things from the green part, from the frontal lobe, from the executive state. Okay? They can't. When someone is under a lot of stress, usually they have judgment errors. Okay, that's a part of what we're dealing with when people are under stress. Okay, remember our green area is now working really well. The limbic system takes over, the blue, and then the survival mode takes over, which means that a lot of the times we are not making good decisions. So when you're talking to your family, or when you're talking, I'm sorry, to your client, you tell them. So don't be not mad or upset, but understand that they might not making good decisions right now because they're not thinking from their executive brain. They're thinking from their survival mode. You keep on trying. You keep on doing what you're doing because you're doing. It sounds to me like all of your clients, even the ones that are feeling guilty, are doing. They're not sitting there helpless, right? They're not sitting there doing nothing with their family, okay? So psychoeducation is big, reframing is big, and then you sit with them. You sit with them and you give them empathy. It's really hard to try and help someone and feel like they can't hear you. That's really hard. What do you want to do about it? Remember, the next step is, now that you're feeling like this, what do you want to do about it? Never miss that step because there's always something to do. Well, I don't want to think about it right now. I think I'm going to take a nap. Okay. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. Maybe I'll try again tomorrow. Okay. Maybe I need to go for, I don't know, again, where these people are. So I don't know if they're going to able to go and exercise a little bit and take that out of their system, whatever it is that they can do. Okay. I'm going to play with my kid. I'm going to go and I'm going to hug my kid. Okay. You do that. All right. Does that make sense? We're not going to sit there with their helplessness and we're not going to rephrase it as helplessness. We're going to say other things. Okay. If I didn't answer your question all the way through, please tell me and we keep on going.
Ну, тут Відповідь є, але дивіться, я
So I've
менше стресі.
received part of the answer, so I'm under less stress, so I can have a more sober assessment of the situation. But some people are under greater stress. Am I not responsible to them to explain them that they are under stress and that's why they don't really have the right judgment of the situation?
You can use that. Absolutely, I would. Listen, when it comes to people's lives, you want to use that. You want to tell them, just FYI, I want you to know for your information that under stress, usually people don't make the best decisions. Their judgment is usually off by a little bit. So if usually you're a very good decision maker, you're not a very good decision maker when you're under stress, especially not when it's fighting for your life. Okay? You should say that. That's psychoeducation. Now, but then you give the ball to them. What do you want to do about it? Okay? I think what's happening with you, and I can see Olga, right? I see the way you are. You care so much that you're feeling like you're not getting through to people. And one of the things you want to be very, very careful of as therapists is that you don't jeopardize yourselves. Okay? You're offering the help that you can offer, but ultimately, these are people's decisions to make. Okay? They are going to have to make a decision of how they want to continue. Your job is to empower them and to make them feel at least that they are in control, because one of the things that destroys us under a crisis is that we feel that we have no control over anything. If that's your decision, you're in control of that. Okay? But you're right there with them. You're doing already something by being on the phone with them. The fact that you're right there with them is already helpful. I know it doesn't sound like much. It's a lot when you are in that position of crisis. Okay? But again, there's a limit to how much we can do and how much we can convince people. I can tell you that over here in Israel, sometimes I have people that will not go into a bomb shelter when rockets are flying, and it's craziness over here. And they won't go in. There's not much I can do for them. What I do is psychoeducation. I want you to know that when you don't go into the bomb shelter, your kid that is going to the bomb shelter is way more scared at the moment. What you're doing to your kid right now is you are shaking his confidence and you're shaking his safety. So why don't you go into the bomb shelter? Because it will help out your kid. I will give them that psychoeducation, but then ultimately that's their decision. Really, really difficult that we can't do it for everybody, but we really want to also remember, as therapists, you want to breathe. You cannot take all of it on your back. You guys are already on your way to being burnt out. Be very, very careful. Okay? All right. More questions. I want to say something that we didn't talk about so much last time, and then we'll go for the next question is secondary trauma. Okay? You guys are prime candidates to have secondary trauma or burnout or / not so much compassion fatigue, but for the most part, secondary trauma, which means you're listening to awful stories, you're supporting people in really crazy situations and very, very difficult stories that they have. And usually what happens is that their stories turn into yours. Okay? And when that happens, you're starting to feel the same symptoms as they do. You don't sleep very well, you don't eat very well, you can't breathe sometimes, your body is reacting. Okay, you might have avoidance, like you don't want to talk to people, at least not socially, you'll just do your job, but then that's it. Pay attention to all these symptoms, because that's where you're putting yourselves at risk. Okay, you really want to be in a position where you are doing okay. You cannot help anyone, not right now or after the war as an aftermath, if you're going to go down with them. Okay? First aid intervention, mental health interventions are meant to prevent PTSD. So people will not have post-traumatic stress disorder. Those are very difficult to deal with afterwards. So in order for that to happen, you really want to pay attention to yourselves and to make sure that you're not recreating the trauma for you. So have some self-care, detach a little bit, do some things that really charge your batteries throughout the day. So you're not constantly just sitting in that war zone and in those stories, because it will get to you. Okay, because again, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. All right, yeah, more questions.
Ірина, питайтеся.
Irina, go ahead.
Так, в мене є питання.
I have a
Я
question.
хотіла якось так перевірити себе, я тільки починаю.
I'm just a beginner on this pathway, the pathway of psychotherapy. Did I get it right that when people are in safety and they have already left, they are in a safe place, they are even outside of Ukraine, but these stress symptoms are haunting them? They need to calm down via standard techniques like grounding, breathing, and they need to keep telling themselves that they are in safety, just for this message to hit home, right? I'm talking about a period within 1 month after they left. So they moved to a different country, or maybe there's something else that should be done to help them calm down when they are already in a safe place, but those symptoms are still exhibiting.
Yeah, there is. It's a great question. So I want to share this with you guys, and then we'll make this a little better. Look at this. So when you look at this graph, okay, this graph talks about, this is really the pathology of stress, okay? There's such a thing as acute stress reaction, acute stress disorder, and PTSD, okay, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, acute stress reaction happens within the first 48 hours of an event. So if something happens, there's a bombing, there's a something, I'm having all these stress reactions. Some of them are mental, some of them emotional, some of them behavioral, and a lot of them are physical. I can throw up, I can shake, I can have heartbeats, I can sweat, okay? I can vomit. Everybody has a different one. Now, for a lot of people, what happens is, you see that's the red. For a lot of people, after something happens, their bodies and their symptoms calm down as a natural healing. It just happens. Because you're not shaking for 48 hours. You shake and then it goes away. Okay? Your body has a way to go into survival mode and then calm itself down, usually. The blue is where you're already turning this into a disorder. Acute stress disorder means the symptoms are not going away. And some of the symptoms are hypervigilance, like we said, you can't really sleep. It's a month long, right? And the symptoms are not going anywhere. You're seeing the scenes again. You are re-experiencing the trauma, all of the above. And that's for 30 days. Now, the situation that you're in is that the stress is constantly acute. People that have been in a war zone for 30 days, their stress has been acute and very high level for a very long time, which means that even when they cross the border into safety, just telling them that they're safe is not going to help. That's not going to do it. All right. They need to really work and understand that there's a body reaction that they have to work on. They have to work on their body, but also they need to shift their story and they need to tell the story right, which means once we're dealing with the aftermath, I crossed the border, I'm in a safe place. There's going to be a natural healing and a natural curve of some of the symptoms that are going to come down, right? People are not going to constantly shake. They're just going to shake if they think they heard something. Okay? If they think there's a bombing, if something, they're not going to sleep well, they're not going to eat well, they're going to be constantly worried. However, here's what we do with them. We create a narrative, okay? We create a story and we ask them to tell their story in snapshots, really. I did this, then this happened, we did that, then we did this, then we did this, then we did this, okay? I moved from this house to this house. We were safer there, then it wasn't safe. We moved here, then we moved here, then we got to the border. Let's say that's the case. Then you're gonna look at it and say, okay, look at what you've done. We are reinforcing all the actions that they took. Everything that they did, we're going to reinforce. And people are going to say, but it was so scary. And I'm looking at them and say, sure, it's scary, but look at what you did. Sure, it's scary, but look at what we did. You are going to retell the story with them again and again and again and again and again to be in a place where they are crystallizing their memory. We're going to get to that in a way that they're more empowered than not. I want people to remember their actions. You don't have control of your environment, and the environment is very dangerous, but you can control your actions, and they did. They chose to do this. They chose to do that. Here's what happens with crystallization of the memory. Think about it this way. Usually it happens in a very short time, but inside of a trauma, so many things happen in a war, okay, that eventually we're going to have a narrative of a war. I was so scared the whole time. People would say I was paralyzed the whole time. And I'm thinking, if you were paralyzed the whole time, how did you get here to safety? Right? Which tells me you're not paralyzed. So why don't you tell me your story? Okay? When people get stuck on emotions, and they will when they tell you the story, you validate their emotions and you move on from it. You don't sink into it, because they are in such a stage right now that if they're going to sink into their emotions while the war is still happening, they're going to fall apart. Regular psychotherapy would be digging into these emotions and feeling them and being in them. And I do that in my clinic. In a war zone, when this house turns into a war zone, I don't do that. We move into, you're feeling scared. I know, but what did you do? You were feeling scared. You were having an awful reaction, but what did you do? What worked for you? And that's a big question, by the way. If you want to put that, write it down. What worked for you is one of the biggest questions you can ask, because something always works for somebody. But when we think about it and when we want to tell a story, usually we tell it as victims. Usually the wording is as victims. It was awful. They were bombing us. We didn't know what to do. So we did this and that. Okay. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear it from a different point of view, because the more you're going to tell it this way, the more you're going to remember it this way, the more empowered you're going to be. And the less chance you have to turn and develop this into trauma. Also, more so, if you're a parent, the more you're going to talk about it from an action point of view, this is how your kid is going to remember it. He's not going to remember it as a victim. The more you're going to tell that story. Now, think about it this way. During acute stress, when people are super stressed, and it's ongoing acute stress over there, the green part is not working well, right? The frontal lobe. So whatever sentences you're going to implement there, that's what they're going to have. So if I want someone to remember empowerment, he's going to remember it. But you need to reinforce it. You want the memory to be stabilized as a narrative of empowerment and not a narrative of victimness. Also, a narrative of something happened and something finished, especially the ones that got into the refugee camp. All right. So, for example, if there was an awful bombing one day and the next day there isn't, okay, and people are on the phone with you the next day, you definitely want to close down the event and say, the bombing started at 8, it finished at 5. I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. I'm just saying 8 to 5, time capsule, cap it. Because from 8 to 5, I can handle. If you're going to say they're bombing all the time, well, that I can't handle. Okay? You want to help people narrow it down, minimize it, put it in the right perspective, and crystallize the memory, because the memory is something that is constantly shifting, right? You have a big frame and then it constantly shifts. Do a little exercise. Think about something that happened to you guys when you were 5. Something, a childhood memory when you were 5 years old. Do you think that the way you remember it today is the way you remembered it 15 years ago? Research shows, recent research actually shows, that it is so far from it. It's unbelievable. There was a research that was done on women's diaries, okay? women that were writing in their diaries every day, and it was a stretch of 20 to 30 years. They were writing in their diaries when they were traveling. I don't remember exactly where, but they were traveling and they were writing. And they were telling their stories. 30 years later, when you ask them about their memories, they remember the same events in a different way. Completely different way. It was like not even the same story. They weren't lying. But this is what memory does. Now, I want to be that little person with a little magic stick that says that if I can do any good to your memory, I'm going to do good to your memory. I want you to remember yourself empowered. I'm not making the situation pretty. I'm making you empowered. And that's the difference. Okay? Does that help? Does that help?
Так, дякую.
Yes, thank you.
All right, perfect. Any more questions, Aliona?
So there is a question in the chat, if I may, okay?
В мене є таке,
Kel?
і в мене ще є запитання.
And I also have a question
відчуття провини.
about guilt.
Ми казали недавно про те, що людина щось може зробити.
Recently, we talked about the fact that a person can do something if this person is in a safer place, even though the parents are behind in the battle area. But it's true in those cases when a person can call or do something. I have one client and she cannot do that. And she's experiencing enormous guilt because her mom is in Mariupol under constant bombings. This mom is very old and it was not possible to physically evacuate her. And her mom blessed her daughter to leave. And the daughter also has some health issues because she's insulin dependent. And she has some issues with her joints. She has difficulties moving around. So her husband and she left while her mom stayed behind. And she's experiencing this enormous guilt because she cannot do anything. She's not really in contact. There's no communication whatsoever. And this guilt is mounting day in, day out. We have discussed this guilt on multiple occasions. We try to understand when this guilt arose. Maybe it has something to do with the past life. It is related to the past life, but she cannot cope with this guilt right now. She's like, my brain understands it all. So I understand in my brain that I did everything within my capacity, but still this guilt is consuming her. So how do I build a link or a bridge between the limbic system and the green zone with her understanding and emotions? How do I strike that balance?
Awesome question. Thank you. It's a great question. So the one thing you want to ask someone like this, because guilt is going to be coming up a lot in your work right now. Because some people made it to safety and some people didn't. And her problem is that she has no contact, right? She can't really do anything. And so she's sitting with guilt.
Да, не може.
Right? So I understand from you that when you're saying, okay, she understands it's here, but she can't cope. So what do I do with the limbic system? And I always ask, you're feeling guilty. You're feeling it right now. Forget the thoughts of guilt because you already know that in your head, you're not guilty, right? But you know that guilt right now sits for you in your body, really. Okay? What does that mean? What do you want to do with it? What do you want to do with it? First, you could do stuff that has to do with mindfulness, like where exactly does it sit in the body and stuff. I'm not so sure I would do that in a time of a war zone. I won't do that in wartime, but I will ask, now that you're sitting in guilt, what do you want to do with that guilt? You have a choice. What do you want to do with it? Do you want to give it half an hour a day? Do you want to give it 24 hours a day? Do you want to give it 24 hours a day for the next 8 months? That's what I would ask. These questions are very annoying. But what they do is they tell someone, this is the situation. It is what it is, right? You are sitting in guilt. Now that you have the guilt, and it sounds to me like she likes it, it helps her out. What do you want to do with it? Right now, guilt is what keeping you at float. That's what it sounds to me. It's eating you alive, but it's keeping you at float. What happens if you let go of the guilt? What happens then? Okay, these are all these questions that make people think. If you let go of the guilt, what's going to happen? It's very scary. Because if you let go of the guilt, you don't know what you're left with. Okay, so that's question number one. Question number two, what do you want to do with it? Let's say you need to manage the guilt. You choose to marry the guilt. Okay, marry the guilt. How long do you want this marriage to be? Because this war is a marathon. How long do you want to use it? I'm not telling her, let it go. I'm not telling her, listen, you didn't do anything. I'm not even going there. What I'm doing is I'm feeding into her limbic system for a second. And I'm telling her limbic system, I'm putting a spotlight there. And I'm saying, okay, this is where you're at. And you're sitting with this uncomfortable feeling. It's gonna feel uncomfortable for a long time. What do you want to do with it? There's something, remember, there's something after fear. There's something after guilt. There's something after every emotion. All right, you're guilty. Great. What do you want to do about it? Maybe because you're feeling so guilty, you can take that energy and channel it towards other people. You can't help your mom, but you can help someone else. Okay? One of the things that we've learned in COVID is when everything is lost and you don't know what to do and you're feeling helpless, you go and you help someone else. It does magic. So you're guilty about your mom. I'm not saying don't be guilty. Hold that guilt. It's okay, because it sounds to me like it's doing something for you. That's fine. But why don't you take that energy? Why don't you take your action and help someone else in need? Like your parents, like your mom. Okay? Give her something to do. But don't let her separate from that guilt. It's serving something for her. I don't know what it serves. Again, I would ask her, if I would take away the guilt, what would you be left with? But something about this guilt is serving her. Does that make sense?
Так, дуже вам вдячна, бо я
Yes, thank you very much indeed. I forgot that, in fact, you can also take care of other people. So thank you very much for having prompted that.
Perfect.
Because I started feeling helpless when I was working with this wound, but this is a very good piece of advice. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Perfect. I want to say something about helplessness because it's going to come up and it's coming up a lot. Helplessness and guilt. Think about the parallel process. The parallel process says, usually, if I'm feeling it, they're feeling it. If I have it, they have it. So if a therapist, I feel helpless, I'm going to talk to people that are feeling the same way. Okay? You need to find something within you that shifts your mindset as therapists as helpless. Because I bet you anything, if we're going to scrape some of the way you guys feel, we're going to find that the minute before you even pick up the phone to help someone, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to tell them. I don't know what I'm going to tell them. I got nothing to do. I got nothing to say. Okay? If this is how you're feeling when you're picking up the phone, then you're already bringing helplessness into the conversation. I'm not saying you're doing it. I'm saying we need to watch it and we need to take care of you. The parallel processes that what's happening for you, happening for me. That's one. Two, if you're in a position where you're feeling helpless, a second before you even answer the phone, do a 5-minute thing. What is it that I do? What is my goal in this conversation? What is the goal? What's my goal? My short-term goal right now when I'm going to answer the phone, what is my goal? Because if my goal is to save that person, it's not going to happen. If my goal is to make her not be scared, it's not going to happen. If my goal is to make her grief go away now that she lost her parents, it's not going to happen. Make sure you understand what your goal is, the short-term goal. When you pick up the phone and talk to someone, what is the goal? The goal is usually to stabilize someone, to be there for them, to keep them company in this awful time, and to help them manage their symptoms, their stress symptoms. If you think your goal is to save them or give them solution from this craziness outside, then you're always going to feel helpless. Be very, very clear about what that means because it is super important. Okay? Take a second, remember who you are, regulate yourselves, then answer the phone, knowing what your expectation is from the conversation. If someone is miraculously feeling amazing after talking to you, yay, that's a win, great, even better. But aim for reasonable expectations when you're dealing with situations like that, okay? I cannot heal people. I can definitely not take someone's sadness away. When I'm dealing with grief, and you guys are dealing with a lot of grief, I can tell you that when that happens, if I have the expectations that if someone is going to talk to me, they're going to feel so much better afterwards, and they're going to forget that they lost their husband, their son, their daughter, forget it. Makes me not a very good therapist. Okay? Like that. You want to hold into it, you want to focus. All right. More questions, Aliona?
Yeah, so there been a question in the chat, and I'll read it to you, okay? And
Yeah.
it's a question from Irina Shcherbakova. So she asked, is there any right way to say for a person, to support a person, if recently the person learned about the death of the loved ones, and as well if a person has no knowledge about the loved ones because they're in a dangerous situation? Is there any right way to talk to?
So there's loss and there's no knowledge, right? Two different things. Loss is when it's confirmed, and no knowledge is when you're worried, but you have no idea what's going to happen. So there's a little two different situations. Sometimes, well, it's two different situations because no knowledge gets you to worry, right? And the stress level goes up. Loss gets you to sadness and to devastation. Okay, you don't worry anymore. You already know that it's bad. Okay. Never in my life did I deal with grief and I could miraculously bring someone to life. Wish I could. What do we know as therapists? We know that when we give someone the worst, I guess, when we tell them the worst news possible, because we're all scared of dying, right? That is the one thing that everybody's scared of. When we give them those news, what do you expect? Set up your expectations for a second as a therapist. Really set it up. Are the person going to be sad? Check. Are they going to have some physical symptoms? Some people do. Check, right? They're going to be crying. They're going to be, they won't be able to breathe, right? We see that a lot. We're going to have physical. Some people are going to shake. Some people are going to scream. We're going to have some physical reactions. We're going to have a lot of sadness. And we are looking at the long-term recovery. This is not a short-term stuff, long-term. Under circumstances of war, if someone is going to drown into their sadness right now, we are going to lose them. What we want to do during circumstances of war is while we deal with grief, we're keeping them functioning. Okay? You hold the grief and you hold functioning at the same time. Otherwise, you will lose these people. Okay? This is where it's different from psychotherapy. In psychotherapy, I let them sink into it. And we sink together and we sit in it. When it comes to situations and circumstances of war, you need people to function. If I'm a mother and I have 3 kids that I have to take care of, unfortunately, and I'm saying it with the greatest sadness, if I lost a child, I have 3 more that I have to handle, and this is wartime, which means I have to function. Set up the expectations. Great, right? Great sadness, physical and mental and emotional reaction to it, understanding the condition that this is a long-term recovery, and this is a war situation, so we need them to function. So you're there, you're empathic. This is awful news. This is very sad. I see your sadness. I'm sitting here with you. What do you want to do next? Move, keep them moving into action. The question is always the same one. If you've noticed, this is how I speak. What do you want to do next? This is what I tell my child at home. When he tells me he had a bad day, I'm like, okay, I see that. What do you want to do? Always call for action, because you don't want them to sink. You want them to get into a place where they are doing eventually better. They will process grief when this war is over. This is not the time to process it. This is the time to get the news and do something. Okay, it is awful. I know it sounds really awful. It sounds like it's not humane, but it really is the best practice that you can give them. So when they are, so they will survive and they don't fall apart in times right now that we can't have that happen. That's for the loss. When it comes to no knowledge, that is one of the hardest things to hold, okay, and to handle. I don't know what's going on. I have no contact. I don't know if they're dead or alive. Somebody bombed that area. I don't know what's going on. People are going to be super anxious. First, physically regulate them, right? You physically regulate them. You emotionally regulate them. You work on the symptoms. You give them a lot of psychoeducation. People in your position that are very, very worried, their stress level is very, very high. That's what happens. When the stress level is very high, the body reacts like that. You look the way you look. Okay, now that you're really, really worried, what do you want to do? You can sit here and be really, really worried, but what do you want to do? Okay, call for action. What do you want to do without worry? Maybe you want to volunteer with someone else's family so you can, not think about your own for a second. How about if you worry about them 3 hours per day and then the rest of the time do something else? Give them a call for action. Don't take away their worry. You can't. Can't adjust your expectation as a therapist. If I don't know where my son is, I can't breathe half of the time, right? I can't breathe. Okay, we're going to try and regulate you, and then we're going to let you do something else, and then we're going to bring you back. And you can sit in your worry. It's okay. I'm not going to take the worry away from you. A lot of the times people resist interventions and they resist therapy because they feel that you're going to take away that one thing that they know how to do. Don't take it away from them. Because if I'm going to be honest, if that happened to me and I wouldn't know where my kid is, I don't want anybody to tell me not to worry because I will worry. People in your position that don't know where their families are, worried, sick. They are worried, sick. Okay. It looks like this. It sounds like this.
Не лише в
This
одному
is the
місці.
manifestation. What do you want to do about it? Okay. Does that make sense? I hope I answered it.
Yes,
Okay.
it does. I see 2 hands, but still
Yep.
I have a continuation of the question of the ones that you answered just now in the chat. And there is a question, so do we do that until the end of the war or until the moment that the person feel safe or in a safe place? Because it's necessary to have the morning and to have the feeling of the
Safe place. Safe
Yeah.
place. So really, when they get out of the zone and they're in a safe place, if you don't need them to be functional anymore, like even think about it this way, even if you're going into a safe place, you're going into a refugee camp, you're still not in a good place, okay? And this is still a very stressful situation. This is not normal times. We don't want people to fall apart there as well. So until really you don't need them to have such a high functioning so they can actually sit and process, okay? But you can say, you can't drag it forever. And kids, for example, kids are gonna ask, where's my dad? Where's my dad? Or I miss my dad. I miss my dad. I miss my dad. My dad died. I'm so sad. I miss my dad. And situations like that, you don't not talk about it. You say, it is awful. I see that you're sad and I see that you miss your dad and I'm so sorry that you lost your dad. What do you usually do when you miss someone? What do you do when you miss?
Right.
Do you wanna, I don't know, think about a song that you used to sing together? Do you wanna go into a fun memory? Do you wanna do something soothing that you used to do with them? What do you do when you miss? We usually miss those questions. We don't ask them. We tell people, oh, I miss someone, and we just say, okay. Ask, always get to a call for action. Let people do something about their feelings. It's more helpful.
Thank you. So Svetlana was first with the hand. Go ahead, Svetlana.
Дякую. Айла, по-перше, дуже дякую за
Well,
другу.
first of all, I want to say a big thank you for part 1, for part 2, for the material, for the delivery. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, a question. In the first part, you said that if everything goes fine, you can see this person one more time. And there's one thing I would like to understand for myself. I really like this approach. Okay, you are sad, I can see that, I understand that, but what do you want to do with that? So I love this approach. But how long should we use this approach, and when can we transition to psychotherapy? So how can we know that it's a good time to segue into psychotherapy, like regular psychotherapy?
When someone is feeling safe, when we're safe, when
Yes.
you don't need someone to be in the level of functioning anymore and they can actually attend to their feelings, that's where you usually can open up the story. Now, I have to tell you, as someone that is doing trauma-focused therapy, even when we untie it and we start talking about it, we do it in such a way that we're not falling apart as we do it. We process it, but we also have that perspective of resiliency, right? And the perspective of resiliency would be, what worked for you during this whole time? What did work? What did you use? What were your strengths when you did it? Okay. Now, again, when you're dealing with grief, it's different because people have lost someone and you have to process that. And when I say, when I'm talking to someone and I'm saying you're sad, what do you want to do about it? It's not, I'm not doing it in a cold way. I'm saying, honey, I know you're super sad. And it's awful that you just lost someone. What do you want to do right now? A day at a time, a minute at a time. Okay? When you have people that are calling you just for an intervention and you know you're not going to see them again, you go one shot and done. So you just do the intervention as we did, right? You create an assessment, you understand who you're dealing with, looking at the symptoms, understanding their strengths, and getting them to act, do something, right? Making this to work and get them to have a feeling of self-efficacy and self-confidence instead of victimness. That's really the intervention in one sentence. But when you have people that you're seeing all the time, you don't want to start psychotherapy when these people are not safe yet. Okay?
Дякую.
Thank you.
So Yana, can you ask a question?
Yes, I'll ask in English, if that's okay. I hope it doesn't mess up the translation thing. Okay, so I have a question about a category of people who feel unable to do anything and help, and all they can do is barely like basic functioning, and there's guilt associated with that, and there's we're talking about actions here and things what can you do, how can you be proactive about your guilt, and people are now experiencing a lot of fatigue, and that has been accumulated because of that, and they claim they cannot do much, they can barely sustain their own lives. What can be done there?
So let me ask you this. What does that mean? I cannot do much. I can only sustain. What does that mean?
So for example, a lot of people are volunteering and helping in many different ways. And these people say that they don't feel that they can help. And they feel guilty that others are helping and I'm not. But I can't. I don't feel physically or emotionally ready to support others. And for example, in terms of basic functionings, people struggle with, taking showers or cooking or just taking care of themselves, buying groceries, things like that.
Where is that? Is that on the other side of the border, or is that
it's outside of the
fire?
border? Outside of the border, yes.
So I would start with psychoeducation, because what it tells me really is that, think about it this way: I am functioning under fire. I get to a safe place and then I fall apart. Okay, that's something that happens all the time. We see it all the times because the body was under so much stress that when we get to a place where we don't actually have to fight for our lives, we crash. Okay, so I would start with psychoeducation so they will know the condition. Understanding the condition is rule number one. Understand what's happening for you. Then I would ask them, you're talking about guilt and you're talking about fatigue. Okay, what do you want to do with either one? What is the guilt here for? What is it serving you? And how is the fatigue serving you? The fatigue is probably your body saying that it's been too much. It's been too much. And the body's saying, I need to rest. Okay. What does that mean that you're having guilt? Well, how does that serve you?
Maybe they would say the guilt is saying me that I need to help others, but my body is telling me that I'm tired. And
Right.
those are the two conflicting things.
Perfect. So there's a conflict. My body's too tired, but my mind or my heart is telling me, oh, guilt is mine, right? Guilt. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm too tired. Now you see the conflict, you see these things. What do you want to do? How do you want to solve it? Now, I'm going to stop here for a second and I'm going to explain what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Look at it for a second as a dynamic point, from a dynamic point of view. I am never offering solutions. All I do is I show people what the map looks like, what the situation is. Here's what we're seeing. We're reframing it a little bit, right? And I'm saying, okay, there's a conflict right here. After 2 sentences, we realize the conflict. And I'm handing it back to them. The reason I'm doing it is because I want them to start feeling that they have some kind of control. Because crossing the border is not enough to survive. You may be surviving physically, but mentally, if you're not going to take control and feel like you're in control of something, you're gone. Okay?
Yeah, it's just the beginning of another story.
It's just the beginning. Super important that people will feel in control of what's going on and that they have a choice in something. Otherwise, winning a war or surviving a war is not just about the body. It's not. Okay? So you give them the situation. That's what I did, right? We rephrased it a little bit, and then you ask them, here, what do you want to do with it? Now that they're facing that choice, they'll tell you, well, this is too hard, but this is heavy. And I'm like, okay, I'm with you. Whenever they talk, I'll do this with my hands, right? Okay. It's, what do you want to do? And I can tell you, and this is where psychoeducation comes in. Some people do a little bit every day, just a tiny bit every day. They go and help, instead of 8 hours a day, they go and help for 20 minutes. And then they increase it within a few months. Some people choose to first nourish themselves and take a minute, and only then start working on themselves, right? Do you see what I'm saying? I'm giving them options through psychoeducation. I want to show something, and I think that will make sense. It will help out. So let me share this for a second, and I hope that will make it clear. So the Syriac model, I don't know if we talked about it last time, but what you do with this model is really you give empathy to the situation that they're in. I'm not judging them. I'm saying you're fatigued and you're, you know, and you're guilty. Okay. And then I'm reframing the situation for them, which we did. And then I'm giving them back the control. What do you want to do about it? If I don't get an answer, I give them psychoeducation. Some people do this, some people do that. Sometimes this helps, sometimes that helps. And I bring it back to them, back to the control. What do you want to do about it? Okay. And then I give them some more empathy. It's really hard to be in a position where you're feeling guilty, but you feel like you don't have any energy. That is tough, people. It's a tough position to be in. We're not judging. We're just saying it's really, really hard. What do you want to do about it? Because guess what? If they're talking to you and they're asking for your help, it means that they don't like where they're at. It means that they want to change. So if they want to change, if we're not judging, we're actually, the door is open for that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So, and I have a follow-up question. So someone asked me then, the next question was, can you give me another way of looking at this, another way of how do I allow myself to rest? Yes, all this makes sense, but what do I tell myself about this guilt? What, or for example, okay, 20 minutes a day, that's fine. What is the, they just want a narrative, they just want a story. How can I let myself rest for a month, let's say, and then start helping, or help only 20 minutes a day, not 8 hours a day? How do I negotiate myself? What do I tell myself?
What do I tell myself?
Yeah. And they want what they want a line, they want a story, they want to know, you know, something.
That's the guilt talking.
Yes, exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's what I would do. I tell them that's the guilt talking.
Okay.
So when you say that, that's the guilt talking again. And again, remember, we have guilt and we have needing to rest. But
Yeah.
that's the guilt talking again. So bring it back. That's your job as a therapist to reframe it for them again and put it in the right spot, right? So when people are saying that to you, they're saying, solve it for me. And I'm saying, I'm not going to solve it for you. I'm just going to put it in the right place again. When they're saying a sentence like this, well, what do I tell myself? They're
Mhm.
talking out of guilt. So put it back to the perspective of the guilt. Right? We have to be, I have to tell you, to do this kind of, this line of work, especially for psychotherapists, you have to be able to read subtext. What is
Yeah.
the subtext of the text, right? The subtext is, I'm back to guilt. I'm like, great, you're
Yeah.
in guilt again. What do you want to do about it? Guilt is here again.
Okay. Okay. So,
Right.
and then you just ask again, what do you want to do about it? Okay.
Yeah. And again, you don't do it in a nudgy way, but you do it in a way where you're really giving people some something to think about, food for thought, really.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
I have like 2 more minutes, and I can't believe it's already 8:30 because I have another session that I have to go on. Actually, the mission that is going to Bulgaria is meeting at 8:30 for us. I'm so sorry. I feel like I didn't get to everybody, and we didn't really go through half of the materials. So I'm hoping that Aliona and I are going to set up something in Bulgaria. We can do that for sure. And then I'll be, after being in contact with the refugees, it probably would be super helpful. And then I am ready to keep on going as long as you guys need. As long as we have people that want to do this, I'm up for it. So I'm so sorry that it's time.
Thank you so much. Really, thank you so much. You did everything in a very structured way. And as you can see, we had a lot of questions. That's how important you work here. And that's how important the information you are giving to us. And
Perfect.
for me personally, it was the most important thing that you said, like to give strength to the person is just like to give them the feeling that they can decide and they can do something. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and I really hope that this helps some. And I'm willing to do this again. So hopefully, Aliona will talk, and then if we can set it up again, we will do that. All right. I have to run, so you guys can keep on going. Bye.
Have a great evening.
Дякую.
Thank you.